What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. We're here today on the channel with, as you may have seen on Twitter, I think we'll get into this a little bit more as the conversation moves forward. This is my uncle. This is Jordan B's white uncle. Yeah, I think we'll get into that a little bit, but this guy has a burgeoning Twitter account, a burgeoning podcast following. If you follow him on, what is it, Teaching with Tim, at Teaching with Tim on Twitter.
So it's actually at Tim_teaching.
Tim
on
_teaching.
Twitter.
Okay.
I have a blog that's teachingwithtim.com, which is the same, basically the same thing. There's another Twitter account we could talk about later if you want. We can get into that.
Yeah, that's kind of the what do you want to call it?
That's the one that's close to my
alt
heart.
account, the JT account.
JT.
So we have the JT account. I don't know if everyone's ready for that account quite yet. I think they need to start with the Teaching with Tim account.
Yeah.
So
it's an amazing account.
So
amazing account in life.
Absolutely. What's the other one? One more time. The main one you want them to follow.
At Tim_teaching.
At Tim_teaching. So if you guys don't know, Tim homeschools his two children. Devout Catholic, devout TLM, Total Latin Mass.
Traditional Latin Mass, yeah.
Actually, sure, yeah. Go. You got it better than I do. Explain it.
Okay, so I'm a lifelong, cradle Catholic, and I hate that term, but that's what I am. I was born into a severely Catholic family, as some people have described it, but no offense whatsoever. It is my life. It's my faith. It's who I am, and it informs everything I do. And if that saying that doesn't mean anything to you, I will tell you I'm the 14th in a family of 16 children. Same mom, same dad. None of us were adopted. So that should definitely give an indication of the kind of people we are and where we came from. And I've been the faith is such a part of my life that when I was growing up, I was homeschooled from 7th through 12th grade. And then I actually was in the seminary studying to be a priest. At that time, total Novus Ordo. That's just what I grew up with. It was, that's what we knew.
As we so affectionately call it, Normie Ordo.
The Normie Ordo Mass, right? I've heard other terms for it, but and I mean, absolutely no disrespect.
No, it's not. There's no disrespect there. It's just something.
I'm not a sede vacantist. For anybody who doesn't know that term, I don't believe that the See of Rome is vacant, and or it remains to be seen. But it's not my call. That's the thing. And I'm a loyal son of the church. I don't like some of the things that have happened over the years. And what did it for me, what turned me into a TLM guy, was that when I was in the seminary, it was in the Newark Archdiocese, where I grew up in the city of Newark. We were the white family there, in the city of Newark, New Jersey. And I studied for the Archdiocese of Newark. And my bishop, when I was in the seminary, was none other than Theodore McCarrick. And I knew him personally. I mean, this was the man who was going to be ordaining me a priest, going to be accepting me into the seminary and giving me assignments and whatnot. Now, I have to say off the bat, because most people who know the story will ask me, did he ever abuse you? Well, first of all, that's a real personal question to hit them with. But the truth is, no, he didn't. I came to find out in the summer of 2018, when all of the McCarrick stuff broke and it really became obvious the kind of monster this guy was, that he apparently would go after anybody unless you were a smoker. You were a smoker. And when I was in college, these became my best friend. 20-something years later, the man never touched me.
Well, the funny
literally
thing,
or figuratively. So
the funny thing to me, and I think you and I both used to like this guy a lot until we found out new things about him, and he attacked movements and people that we are familiar with. But Stefan Molyneux woke me up on a lot of these facts. Stefan Molyneux pointed out to me very quickly that there's far more sexual abuse that goes on in public schools than has ever happened in the Catholic Church. So it's kind of a meme of the idea of like, oh, all this abuse happens in the Catholic Church. And yeah, there are horrible people in the Catholic Church. No one's denying that. What I'm saying is that, if you really wanted to tackle the source of these abuses, you would, the first institution you would attack would be public schooling or government programs. And no one ever wants to touch those things. And I think that's why they come so hard at homeschooling.
Yeah, and I'll tell you something. And statistically, you might be right. I don't know. That's of little interest to me. When it's your faith and it's your church, you want to clean the rot out, regardless of what's going on anywhere else. I could look and say, well, my house is burning down, but statistically, houses in the next town burn a lot more than, doesn't matter when your house is on fire.
Right.
And my house
Right.
is on fire, and it has been. So this is what brought me to the TLM. That summer, 2 years ago, I started following some people and this is such a strange coincidence, Taylor Marshall. Started watching his YouTube videos. I like the guy, got no problem with him. I love his content. For my money, I've always said this, and this is because I have a background in media, but I feel like he needs a producer. I feel like he needs someone to kind of like fine tune some elements of his work, but I'm not going to knock him. I think he does a great job. But as it turns out, I showed you one of his videos a year or so ago, and you said, wait, isn't that Mr. Marshall? He was my theology teacher in high school. And I was like, really? I said, this guy's a big YouTube guy right now. And you're like, no way. He took your phone away in class one day.
There
I
are
thought that was one of the funniest things.
super chats I've sent to Nick, and we both know Nick. We don't need to name drop too much here because we've both met him. But there are super chats that I've sent to Nick before where I've said, hey, this guy, Taylor Marshall, was my theology teacher. And it's like, it's very interesting how how paths realign.
It is a very small world, and God knows what he's doing, and the people he puts in line and make connections with each other. It's scary sometimes. The people I've met early in my life who had a great impact later on, it's going to be totally frightening. But when I started really dwelling on this all a couple of years ago, and I began to realize, long story short, the Novus Ordo Mass was the Mass of McCarrick. This was what he pushed hard, and for very specific reasons. And I just didn't feel, it wasn't that I didn't feel comfortable with it anymore. I found the TLM and I thought, I think this is where I need to be. And I found a very beautiful parish, here in Texas that I go to. And I never looked back. And because there's something incredibly ancient, by definition, it is the ancient Mass of the Church. And there's just something very calming and reassuring about this going so far back. And also the fact that the liturgy really is not open to interpretation. It can't be changed. The priest comes and says the words he's going to say, says what's in the book. Could there be more greater reverence in everything? Absolutely. But there's far less likelihood I'm going to find something I disagree with in terms of style, certainly not in substance, in the TLM. Do I still go to Novus Ordo Masses? Sure. By necessity, you're going to have to. You're not
because
always around the Latin Mass.
Because Novus Ordo is in communion with, if I'm not mistaken, it is in communion with Vatican II. So you are still in line with traditional Catholic teaching and the Catechism if you are going to Novus Ordo.
Well, not only that, Novus Ordo is what we term the ordinary form of the Roman rite of the Mass.
Okay.
So it's the norm.
It's more that TLM is at like a higher level form of the Mass. I'm trying to break it down for like a.
We have to be real careful when we say that, but yeah, the TLM is definitely going to have, into my thinking, a lot more beauty. It's certainly more tradition because it goes well beyond 1962, well before that. But the beauty of the tradition, the grounding, the rooting, and it's a richer liturgy in the sense that we could look at the Byzantine liturgy and say, well, that's very rich. It is,
And I can even speak for myself personally. The few times I went to Mater Dei, I felt more in line with tradition.
Yeah.
Just being at that Mass, it felt more like I was participating in something traditional than then some it and I use this term like really specifically, but it almost felt bastardized going to a Novus Ordo after going to a TLM. And that's not a knock on Novus Ordo or on Novus
Nope.
Ordo.
Yeah.
It's not a knock on that. I'm just saying that it felt different after you go to TLM to Novus Ordo.
Yeah.
Like,
But no, and this is
so
where the virtue of faith comes in, the supernatural gift of faith, that, you know, with faith, we believe that what is taking place on the altar is the priest calling down, you know, the Holy Spirit to transform bread and wine into the very body and blood of Christ to offer to God the Father. That takes place in the ordinary form, Novus Ordo, in the extraordinary form, the TLM. So if you have faith, which is a gift from God, you're going to accept that regardless of which of these two you're at. But if it's a matter of preference, I prefer to be at a place, quite frankly, between you and me, where I, as a man, am witnessing a manly liturgy. I am witnessing a priest who takes on the person of Christ, you know, in great humility, and steps up those 3 steps to the altar and offers the sacrifice of the Son of God to the Father in heaven. And, you know, you can hear a pin drop when this happens at a TLM Mass. And it's just such a awe-inspiring, beautiful thing that I
I was
never
there.
experienced at the Novus Ordo. But it doesn't mean it wasn't happening. It just, you know what I'm saying?
Oh, I
Yeah,
totally agree. I was sitting next to you at Mater Dei after.
yeah,
Well, we're not going to dox family members here, but there was a certain family member of ours that was in tears at the fact that all of her grandkids were in attendance at a TLM mass.
yeah.
So that was
She
very
had all,
powerful
yeah,
to me.
she had all of
It
her
was very
grandkids at
very
the Mass
powerful.
with her in the same pew. And
It was
that
very
was something.
powerful to her.
That woman is like Saint Monica, honestly. She has prayed for years and years and years for her children, for her
And
grandchildren. And
that only makes me Saint Augustine. So,
there are worse people you could be, my friend.
hey, um,
But so
let's
that's how
see,
I got to
Paul.
TLM. But what did I do in the meantime? After I graduated college, well, I was in the seminary. Wound up leaving the seminary. I was actually kicked out of the seminary, and it was you know, it was over an incident where I had been assigned to a parish, and I didn't feel comfortable with the priest who was going to be supervising me. They said I refused the assignment. Yeah, I walked away. I said I've always known when there's a sense of danger around me, get out. And so I turned in my key, and the rector called me in and said, "You're done." I said,
It almost feels
okay.
like an army assignment where you're like, I don't feel comfortable performing this duty.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, this isn't right. I'm following my conscience. And I have
Yeah,
a lot of respect for that, where you're kind of the guy that stands up and is like, hey, you know what? I believe in God. I believe in everything the catechism of the Catholic Church teaches and everything you learned in theology class. You believe in it
yeah,
and you totally buy into Catholicism, but that does not mean that you buy into every single perversion that um, you know, a fallen person or people like Pope Francis profess. You know, like
yeah.
we were texting about this the other day. Someone tried to say that I wasn't really Catholic because I disagreed with Pope Francis, and I said to that not to you, I said to this person, and you appreciated this. I said, Francis talking about LGBTQIA plus issues is
Plus,
no
plus.
different than Francis talking about whether or not he believes the Saints or the Cowboys will win in the Seahawks game. It's
Yeah,
no different because he's not speaking on matters of faith. He's not speaking ex cathedra. Am I right?
you are correct. Yeah,
Correct? Am I wrong?
you're not wrong. You're not wrong. The
It's like,
difference is that when he says it, it carries a whole lot of weight because of
and
his office.
leftists use that to shame us vis-a-vis Christianity, Catholicism. They say, oh, well, you must believe what Francis says. And it's like,
Right.
no, I believe Francis in matters of faith. LGBTQIA plus is not a matter of faith to me. And I
Here's where
don't,
it becomes a hairy issue. So it's matters of faith and morals. Those are the two that you really have to just glom onto what he's saying. And when he speaks ex cathedra, as you said, in his role of confirming the brethren, as Peter, as the head of the apostles, right? So when he talks about LGBTQIA plus or whatever, is he speaking on matters of morals personally, Francis the man, or Francis the vicar of Christ, Francis the bishop of Rome? And he's very vague. And of course, George Newmeyer, actually, I consider him a friend. I've met him a few times. We text occasionally. Reporter for the American Spectator, done a lot of great work on this. And he's written a book about Francis that essentially talks about his upbringing in Argentina with the Peronists, and that's where he learned a lot
of liberation theology.
Oh, the liberation theology is just out of this.
That's
Marxism.
Tell me if I'm wrong. Tell me if I'm wrong on this term. Is that just AOC Catholicism? Isn't it just like the
best way I've ever heard it described?
Isn't it just AOC Catholicism? It's the type of religiosity, right? It's not even Catholicism, because they don't even really believe that. They don't really even believe in transubstantiation. When you really look at it, if you were to, and this isn't every leftist, I'm not saying that, but if you were to ask AOC, does she really believe that the host turns into the body of Christ? AOC would give you some mealy mouth answer about how, well, actually, it's like, an interesting, and actually the host is actually a representative of environmental justice. And it's like, no,
dude,
no, that's not what we believe. We believe
bad AOC.
Bad AOC. And these people don't really believe what they're saying. And here's the thing. Francis, and I'm not trying to knock. I'm trying to stay centrist here in terms of religion. But here's the thing: AOC is basically a socialist Catholic. She's a liberation theology Catholic.
Well, let me stop you there and explain.
You see what I mean?
You and I were talking about this a little while ago, and I said to you, I saw something Claire McCaskill, the former Missouri senator, had tweeted. It was a picture of Donald Trump's living room in Trump Tower, his private home. And she said, oh, it's dripping with gold and mirrors, and aren't you, this is awful. He doesn't think about you, he thinks about himself. And I thought, this is just Marxism. That's exactly what it is. Karl Marx put a name and a face on it. But Marxism, the idea that someone else has everything, you have nothing, and they're keeping you down, is nothing more. This is nothing more than the sin of Adam in the garden.
And it's
Satan coming to Adam and saying, or to Eve, and then to Eve, to Adam, saying, God doesn't want you to have what he has, doesn't want you to be like him, and he's keeping you down, so take it from him. Workers of the world, unite. Rise up. You have nothing to lose but your chains, right? Marxism is pride. It is pervasive in the world. It is just our human nature is just dripping with it. And you want to call it pride or Marxism, doesn't matter. It's all the same thing. Liberation theology is Marxism applied to the Catholic faith. And it has no place in the Catholic Church. And the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith condemned it wholeheartedly in the 1980s under Cardinal Ratzinger, later Pope Benedict. And these were people I had to study when I was in the seminary.
Why do you think? Well, I don't want to get conspiratorial when it comes to the Catholic Church. I think that's
I love
a sin of gossip. Well, no, I think it's a sin of calumny and gossip if we're delving into conspiracy theories about the Holy Church. So I don't want to get into, what happened to him and he got. Well, this is what happened. I don't think that's fair.
Well, no,
I will say
it does beg the question. What happened?
I completely agree with you. I completely agree with you.
First time in 1,200 years that a pope resigned, and we don't know why.
Completely agree. I just feel like with my platform and with yours, I don't think it's fair to delve into weird theory. Not weird. I don't think it's weird. I think it's unfair because we don't have all the evidence. I will say that it's very convenient that a pope like Benedict was just shoved off to the side, and then a new leftist pope comes in randomly.
Yeah, and I will tell you, I love Pope Benedict. I have named my only son after him. And, how much more love do you have?
Careful, don't dox yourself.
Sure, yeah, don't dox myself, okay.
Don't dox yourself.
But that's the kind of love that I had for that.
I completely agree with you. That's like my younger brother. Ben.
And I pray for him every day. I pray for the Pope every day, Pope Benedict, and I pray for Pope Francis every day.
I pray for
But
everyone's soul, even the most evil people in society. I hope that
Friday
they find
night,
salvation. I
Friday
pray for
night,
salvation for these
I
people.
was leaving my house to take my kids, excuse me, to a 7 p.m. mass on a Friday night because we go every day. And I do not say that because I think I'm a holy man or something like that. I say it because my father taught me that. My father was a holy man. My dad was a great man. And the one thing I will always carry with me from his 80 years on this earth was that he never, and I mean never, missed a daily mass. And he took us with him as often as we were willing to go. We always went every Sunday as a family. That was a rule. But this is how my family formed the faith in me. This is how my father gave me the example of great fatherhood, paternity. A father takes care of his family in the faith. He provided for us. He was always there with us, never went away, never left. But he taught us to go to daily mass. And this is what I do with my kids because I see it's so important. We were on our way to daily mass. And what did you say to me as I was on my way out the door? Because you were visiting and you said, Ginsburg's dead. And I said, what? And he said, Jake Tapper's just tweeting it. And I said, well, who knows if that's really what? No, NPR just tweeted it. And I went, well, maybe this is real. Well, it turned out to be true. And we left and we went to mass. I grabbed the kids. I said, listen, we have to pray for the soul of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And then, of course, they said, well, who's she? Let me explain. Why do we have to pray for her? I said, because her decisions and her personal actions led to the deaths of millions of
Hold on.
unborn
Let me
babies in this
let me
country.
read you. Can I read you something really quick from the Bible?
Sure, please do.
I'm gonna go archive mode. Proverbs 11:10. When it go when it goes well with the righteous, the city rejoices, and when the wicked perish, there are shouts of gladness. There is nothing wrong with hating evil, and this is what Christians and Catholics especially have been shamed into believing, that if you ever appreciate evil dying, then you are somehow supposed to be shamed for that. No, I am allowed as a Catholic and a Christian to hate evil, and I am allowed to hate immorality. I'm allowed to hate baby murder. I'm allowed to hate pedophilia. I'm allowed to hate all the horrible evils that are done in society today. It's a joke to look me, not you, obviously, but it's a joke to look me in the eyes and say, what, you're hateful towards abortion? Oh, well, you're hateful then, actually. It's like, no, no,
Yeah.
no, no, no. You're evil for promoting these things, actually. And I'm not taking some random moral high ground. I'm saying that I'm actually not in the wrong for hating evil. You're wrong for promoting it. And that's what people like producers at Netflix do with cuties and stuff. All these
Gotcha.
degenerate movies they make. They turn the framing on us. That's what they do. That's their playbook.
Yeah.
They turn it on us anytime we hate what they're doing. They say, "Oh, well, you must just be obsessed with pedophilia. You love the kitties. So that's why you're mad about this." It's like, "No, no, I'm not mad about it because I love kids. I'm mad about it because I love my cousins and my nieces and nephews and my brothers and sisters and my family."
Right.
It's like they can't even conceptualize a worldview where we're angry that our kids are being sexualized.
But that's so funny when they say you're obsessed with sex. The most sex obsessed group of people in the history of the world from 1967 roughly on to today, where anything goes. And initially it was, well, as long as two consenting adults and no one gets hurt. Well, now it's not consenting adults.
It's
Now it's
not a
14, now it's 12, it's 10. If no one gets hurt, well, if you want to get hurt, as long as you do what we tell you to do, then we're fine with it.
what's
It's
the meme?
disgusting. And I will tell
What's the
you,
meme?
I have a 10-year-old daughter, and I swear to God, if any of these sickos ever come near her, I also have a few guns in my possession. I will blow your head off after I knock
I
you out with
almost
my fist.
this is all ironic. This is all humor. This is all comedy. We're comedians. Tim is a
Yes,
comedian. I'm a
haha.
comedian. We're
Funny
comedians. We're
joke.
laughing. These are jokes.
Yay.
Ba-doom. So it's all funny. It's all fun and games until you come from my little cousin, and then you're done. And then you meet Satan, and then you meet Lucifer.
And then you're
Then you
done.
and then
eternally.
you go, boom, then you're gone. But that's all fun.
Smoke's
But
coming off the muzzle, and I'm just
oh
walking.
yeah. You're just gone. You're just gone, and no one knows where you were. And your family's like, where did he go? And we're
Moral of the
like, oh, I
story
don't know.
is, moral of the story is, stay away from my kids if you're a sicko. Okay.
Stay away from all kids,
Thank
sickos,
you. Thank you.
you perverts. Get
But it's
away from
my
them.
job as their father to protect them, not other people's. But I understand what you're saying.
Bing
So
bong.
anyway, let's come back to this for a second.
um,
So I had worked when I left the seminary. I wound up looking for what my next move was going to be. I was 22 years old, and by the grace of God, I found myself working at the local Fox station in New York City, #1 market in the country. And I was in the newsroom. I'd always, as a little kid, I always wanted to be a news anchor, wanted to work, in New York local news. I was just fascinated by broadcasting. And miraculously, I wind up working, wind up as a trainee, but then quickly moved up to writer, producer. I worked on some morning shows. I wound up working on reality shows. 5 years I had a career doing this, and I loved it. And I was good at it. I just, it wasn't totally fulfilling like I thought it would be. Well, then I wind up meeting a woman who's going to become my wife, winds up being your aunt, and I didn't know you at
I
the
am.
time, but I met her, and I prayed a novena to Saint Rita, patron of impossible causes.
And your
I visited,
future daughter's name.
yeah, and I wound up going to the Church of the Shrine of Saint Rita in Philadelphia. I had a devotion to her for a few other reasons, but I said, Saint Rita, pray for me. I want to meet someone. I want to find the right woman. I want her to have the following 3 characteristics, and faith was the most important. But 9 days, a novena is 9 days of prayer, by the way. 9 days to the day later, I wind up coming face to face, literally, with a woman I'd met in my first semester of college, with whom I had been friends, but we hadn't seen each other in almost 10 years. And immediately clicked. I said, oh, that's my wife. Okay. And we just started talking, and a year and a half later, we're married. Along the way, I'd gotten out of television. I'm like, well, I kind of need to do something for a little cash. And my mother said to me, I always thought you'd make a good teacher. And I said, I thought I told you to put the crack pipe down, Mom. And she said, no, really, you're just compassionate, you're patient, you're kind. And I said, again, I don't know who you're talking about. She said, I sense that. And mothers always know these things. And
It's an
I said,
intuitive sense. It's very
and I said,
intuitive
why are
sense.
you telling me all this, Mom? And she goes, oh, because I just came across an ad in the diocesan newspaper for the religion teacher at the local high school. I sent my resume. It was full of references to like jobs, obviously jobs that I'd had. Assistant director on Queer Eye for the Straight Guy. It was a job, whatever. A bunch of other things. And the very next day, I'm in for a 6-hour interview. I'd never taught anything before at all, and I'm signing a contract to be a theology teacher. And I thought, this is bizarre. And that led to 15 years teaching theology in different schools around the country. I went on and got a second master's in administration. I wound up becoming a vice principal. And then during COVID, during the quarantine, I said to myself, I'm teaching my kids at home now. This has always been my dream. I wanted to do for them what my parents did for me. And
Well,
that's what we're doing now.
and I think that's really important because I think for a lot of the people that are listening, that a lot of the people that would listen to this video, right, or that would listen to your podcast, they almost take that as a given, that public education is like this indoctrination process. It's like this
It is.
leftist, like totally leftist injected ideology.
Yeah.
But to it, like the thing that I'm trying to do with a lot of my content now is trying to make it appeal to normies, because
Sure.
normies are like centrists and left, like centrists. They're the ones that are still on the fence. They don't really know what to believe. People on our side, they already know the facts. They know that modern education was created during the Industrial Revolution, where kids were lined up during rows, and the bells were to mimic.
Just like a factory. Yeah.
Like exactly, they were built like factories. I think people on the right realize that. I think that's true. A centrist doesn't necessarily realize that. A centrist is over here saying, well, actually free education that's a right written in the Constitution, that you need a right to education. And it's like, no, actually, you don't even understand what education really is. What we're doing is de-educating kids right now.
Oh,
They don't
sure.
even understand that. And
It's
you and I
total
get that.
indoctrination.
You and I understand that at like a very deep level. Like,
Yeah.
man, you are taking my kids into this building every day and you are teaching them to hate themselves.
Right. And to
We
hate
know
their
that.
faith and to
Hate
hate
their faith,
American values and
hate the,
culture and the
and
English language and
hate their race, frankly. And
yeah.
you don't have to agree with that. That's fine. But the
No, I do agree with that.
white
Let me
kids are
share a
taught
story with you.
anti-white politics.
Let me share
Anti-whiteness is a huge problem.
let me share a story with you. I taught at a very large high school here in Texas for 6 years, and I have to say I loved my
Don't
time
say it.
there.
Don't say the school.
I'm not. No, no. I said
But
Texas is a big state.
but
Listen,
it's right.
I didn't, not going to acknowledge
I
that
said
or
it.
deny it. Okay, no, but I taught at this school, and
The first word of that high school is a piece you could play on a chessboard, right?
that is correct. Yes. Okay.
Okay, cool.
I still have many friends there, and I will say, by and
Not a
large,
bad school, not a
it's
bad
a
school,
no,
but
by
it's
and large, a very good school, and I will
great
always
school,
say
but
this.
it's like, man, like it has been infiltrated at certain
Totally,
levels.
absolutely.
All right,
And
okay.
and see, I loved the kid. No matter where I've been, I loved my students. The students always made the difference. Students made me want to get up in the morning, go to work, because they were my coworkers, and we had a great relationship. And I think my mom was right. I was called to do this. You put me in front of a group of people and ask me to teach them something, and we're going to bond first. We're going to get along, and it's going to be a lot of fun. If I'm not going to have fun doing something, I'm not going to do it. But I'm going to teach you what I love, and what I love is my Catholic faith. Okay. So I remember the year the year I left that school actually to go take another job at a different school. Um, One of the administrators had decided that we needed more diversity at this school. Okay, whatever. But the way she did it was to mandate that all the faculty take this. What the heck was it called? It was like Diversity EDU, this online course where I, as a Catholic school theology teacher, am being forced to watch videos of a man pretending to be a woman, like a Richard Levine type of person, whatever. And then she decides she's going to bring a speaker to the school. Do you know who that speaker was? I can't think of his
Uh,
last name. It was Tim something. You know the guy I'm talking about.
yes.
The radical,
Ti-
anti-white. Come
I
on, it'll
know
come to you.
Tim Wise.
Yes,
Tim
Tim Wise.
Wise. Tim Wise. Okay, hold on, bro. Okay, I know exactly who you're talking about. Here's the
Mhm.
thing. Here's the red pill on Tim Wise. Okay, anyone who's watching this, if you, sir, not you, Tim,
Yeah.
if you're watching this video and you know what the name Tim Wise means, you know what I'm talking about. This guy is a white presenting, and if you look at his early life in Wikipedia, you will find exactly what you would expect. Southern New York, Bronx, Queens, ethnically Jewish, but it identifies as white. And I'm not trying to bring these things up here. I'm just saying that there is a guy who is Jewish who makes six figures, probably seven figures a year
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
by identifying as white, but shames people for being white, but never actually deals with the consequences of being white. Like
Yeah.
this guy, t- yes,
Can
Tim
I just tell
Wise.
you? Can I tell you? I caught wind of this 2 days before the guy was supposed to come and speak at the school. And I did my research because I said something seems wrong about this. I looked him up, found all the same stuff you were saying. And I found his message is that if you're white, you're the devil.
You're
Essentially,
the
that's
devil.
his message. Okay. And I thought, gee, that doesn't sound like my Catholic faith. It doesn't sound like Christianity. I thought we were supposed to love all men and women. I thought we were supposed to recognize the dignity of every human person. And this is what I've been teaching my students. So who is this guy going to come in here and try to undermine what I have been teaching in the name of the church? I'm not ashamed to say it now. I may have contacted some parents. I may have done a quiet little, thing, whatever. the next day, the day he's supposed to come and speak, an email went out that said, Tim Wise can't make it, so somebody else is going to be coming to speak. And it's a pastor of like a Black Baptist church in Dallas came and spoke, and he was
Not
actually
that
very
that's
good.
not that
He was
that's
actually
much
very good.
better, but it's probably
No,
better than Tim
I have
Wise,
to say
frankly.
he actually was very good.
Probably better
For a
than Tim Wise.
last minute speaker, this guy came in and talked about loving all men, respecting one another. I thought, okay, totally fine.
That's a message I can get behind, but I'm not willing, and this is a red pill that a lot of white people have to take, is like there's nothing cool about hating yourself. There's nothing
Exactly.
there's nothing cool about saying I hate white people. There's nothing cool about saying I'm evil and my ancestors are evil. Nothing cool about that. That's actually self-hatred. If you asked a black person to say I hate my ancestors and they're evil and they did wrong, that would be gross. Obviously that would be gross. But there's this weird standard that we have now where it's like only white people are expected to self-flagellate themselves in public. And
Yes.
it's a weird racial paradigm we're in. I'm not asking you to agree. I'm
No,
fleshing out
I do agree with you on
I'm
that.
fleshing out some of my ideas. And you don't have to anything. You don't have to say
I,
anything.
we're
But
cool. I
it's just
agree with you on
interesting.
that.
It's just interesting to me
Yeah.
to see what I'm watching play out. This is a very recent development too. This is
Yeah.
something that's only happened in the last few years when you really look at it.
Well, it's been building for many years
It has been building
under the
anti-white sentiment.
surface. Yeah.
Correct. But
And I'll say the bottom line to me is, again, as a Christian, as a Catholic,
there's nothing
I
righteous
don't
about hating
I don't
yourself.
look at anyone's skin color. I don't look at anyone's poverty level, wealth. I don't look at your ethnic background. I look at you as a man. I think of the words of Leo the Great with the, Christian, remember your dignity.
I will say
And
this. I will say this. I do start to look at your skin tone when you start to look at my skin tone. So, for
fair
example,
enough. Yeah.
if black people start to say enough times, you're evil because you're white and you're inherently racist against my group, I will start to look at your skin color and they're creating a paradigm where it's like, okay, well, we're going to be forced to talk about race. Do you really want to get into IQ stats?
Ooh,
Not
nice.
really. You don't
Yeah.
really want to get into testosterone levels. You don't really want to get into muscle fiber levels. You don't want to
Mine are
get
kind of high,
into
by the way.
you don't want to get into phrenology. You don't
Yeah.
want to get into any of these. That's why I laugh at the left. When the left says, we love science, we love the science, it's like, oh, you love science up until we start
Break.
talking about IQ levels and testosterone levels and phrenology and brain size. You don't want to talk about anything science related until it doesn't benefit you.
Right.
You don't want to talk about any of it. You see what I mean?
And the same people who say the science is settled are the same people who the next day will say, well, science now says this. Look,
Yeah.
Pluto, not a planet,
Pluto,
right?
look at Pluto.
Poor Pluto. How about Oak Brand? You don't remember Oak Brand, do you?
What is that?
Early 1990s, medical studies came out, and this was the big deal. This was the shit everywhere. That oat bran, you need to get oat bran into your diet like yesterday in like bucketfuls, right?
I'm
Because
only 26, man. I don't even know
it's
what that is.
the 90s, yeah. So you need to get the oat bran into you and like in high levels, and it's going to lower your cholesterol and cut your risk of heart disease. Let me tell you something. My dad was an actuary, a brilliant man. He literally looked at all the studies and he said, bullshit. That's literally what he said. He goes, cholesterol's too high, it's going to mean one thing, too low is going to mean something else. Well, the oat bran lowered the cholesterol, and 6 months later they came out and said, stop eating oat bran. Everyone's getting cancer. Stop it. But they never took it back. They just acted like, well, we said one thing 6 months ago. Pay no attention to that.
Well,
Listen to us
it's
now.
almost like the and I know this is like a normie con talking point. I think a lot of my followers will know what I'm about to say here, but it's like the climate change argument.
Ugh.
It went from global warming, or no, first in the 70s it went from global cooling And then in the 90s, it went to global warming. And then in the 2010s, it went to climate change.
Right.
They had to adjust their message so much that they couldn't even stick to warming or cooling. They just had to say,
Do you know, by the way,
they had
do
to
you know
say
who
shit's
that
changing.
was? Do you know who that was who came up with the term climate change, or who really pushed it to be used?
What was it, Al Gore?
No, it was Frank Luntz, the Republican pollster working for George W. Bush. He
But
told him, because
why
he
would I
said,
be
look,
surprised? They're globalists.
no, but he said, look, global warming doesn't sit well with your base. Call it climate change. And
But the fact that you even, and I agree with you, I acknowledge that change of frame. I'm just saying that it's just funny that like the globalists, and we know what that means, but the people that control the paradigm shift are able to change the language by that so much, and that's interesting.
Look, the climate is always changing for all of history. I mean,
Climate's
come
always
on.
changing.
Do you think that
The
we
only
can actually
debate,
do anything about it? For heaven's
the
sake.
only debate in my mind, and I'm not trying to go down the global warming rabbit hole. What I'm saying is, yes, we all acknowledge that the climate changes. The only debate here is to what extent humans are changing it. I think that's the only interesting argument. That's the only interesting argument that I'm willing to participate in.
Now, here's another factor of that, right? So even if it is, let's say it is warming, right? Warming by what, a degree over the next 100,000 years or something?
They don't want to engage in those type of nuanced debates with you.
How many human beings around the world would be perfectly willing to accept a 1 degree climate change in their lifetime, right? I'd be okay with that. In fact, well, maybe not here in Texas, but in other places, growing up in New Jersey, if someone said, hey, it's going to be a couple degrees warmer in the winter time, I'd be like, okay, I don't have to shovel the snow. But you have literally these lemmings, these low IQ idiots who are out there going, climate change, Brondo's got what plants want, it's got electrolyte. Do you even know what the hell you're talking about?
No, they don't. They don't. They are literally I mean, basically these people are quislings. They're quislings. They're traitors. They're traitors to the country. They would sell out the country in a heartbeat if it meant they were socially accepted at their wine parties.
Yes.
And they were accepted at their local party.
I'm talking about even the idiots who are lower than the wine party crew, the ones who are like, I'm going to go to a dive bar on the Lower East Side on a Friday night with my friends.
How is that really think about this? I'm not trying to do a dunk here. I'm just saying, think about this. How is that any different than the Jamarquius at his ghetto barbecue that refuses to have a heterodox point of view about race? If it meant that him having a heterodox view would mean him facing a couple, ideological darts thrown at him. I've been through this before. I've been through this where it's like, damn, do I give a heterodox point of view about race allegiance, or do I just be quiet and just let them spout anti-whiteness and white man evil, black man perfect, white man evil? And it's like, these are questions you literally have to ask yourself. Like, is it worth it?
Is it worth it
to roll the dice?
I'll put my thing
down. I don't know.
Flip it in reverse. Sorry, I thought it was Missy Elliott for a second. No, but is it worth it, really? Listen, we're seeing this right now, the mask debate, right? You don't want to be a mask debater. But with these masks.
I saw what you did there.
Thank you. Is it worth it? Do you want to walk into a Walgreens and be the one who's like, and I actually do. I don't care. But even I have my moments where I'm like, I just need my cigarettes. I'll put the damn mask on and go into the Walgreens. And you said it to me tonight. I put a Trump flag on my front porch, and it is a beautiful, beautiful Trump flag. And you said, well, when you told me the riots are coming to the suburbs, what are you going to do when they tear this down? Is it worth it to you? And I thought, it is. But
of course,
if the riots get here, I hope to be long gone. Nobody wants to be in the midst of that. But
you can only
it comes down to fortitude. It comes down to that virtue of how strong are you? How willing are you to fight for what you believe in? What hill do you want to die on? And I hate that expression, but where do you want to plant your flag and shed your blood?
You want to break down You want to break down the concept of fortitude really quick? You red pilled me on that 2 nights ago.
Well, fortitude is a virtue. First of all, so a virtue is a good habit. A habit is simply a disposition, something that you do on a regular basis, such that it kind of just becomes a part of you. Brushing your teeth. You're taught as a kid, brush your teeth every day. Well, for most people, you wouldn't really think of waking up in the morning not brushing your teeth because it's habit. It's what you do. Good habits are called virtues. Bad habits are called vices. Okay. If you practice virtue, you're a virtuous person. If you practice vice, you are vicious. That's where that word comes from. So, fortitude is one of the cardinal virtues, and the cardinal virtues, four of them: justice, temperance, prudence, and fortitude. These are the virtues on which all the other virtues kind of hinge. Cardo means hinge in Latin. So, fortitude is strength. Fortitude is moral, I would say certitude. It's the um, being strong in your convictions. That is fortitude. Like any virtue, we acquire it by routine practice. So it starts in childhood in little things, being strong, on the playground when someone's bullying your friend, right? It grows as we get
It's a
older.
very inherent sense.
Standing up to that professor and who's trying to like bully you about climate change or something, and it just gets stronger and stronger. Any virtue that you practice on a regular basis becomes stronger, becomes more of a part of you. So fortitude is essentially it's spiritual strength, and it's what we need to fight the devil. Uh, the world, the flesh, and the devil. You're never going to be able to fight these three. We could never do it on our own anyway. It's why God gives us guardian angels and Saint Michael and the church. But you need that virtue to even be the most ineffective foot soldier in the battle against evil. And if you don't have fortitude now, if you don't possess it, then start practicing it, start acquiring it, build it. Say, stand up in little things, you'll be able to stand up in big things.
I love
Am I
that,
right?
man.
Well, thank you.
The
I appreciate
fortitude
it.
red pill that you gave me was a really big one. I do think about that a lot. I really do like the fortitude red pill. That
Thank
that is
you.
the whole red pill in and of itself, the fortitude.
Yeah.
Um,
Don't forget those other cardinal virtues, though. Prudence, good judgment, right? Justice, giving to each man according to his due.
well, I
What
think
is due to you, what is not due to you, and that's something people overlook.
well, I think
Um,
a lot of these virtues are actually embodied by paleoconservatism and America First. Paleoconservatism in and of itself embodies justice, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
When BLM is bitching and complaining about, oh well, we're over policed and the cops talk to us too much. It's like, well, maybe you're committing too much crime.
Yeah. So
Like
what is due
literally
to
think of,
you?
like what is due to you? Are you due no police interaction? Maybe I put the onus on you to not commit all the crime. And frankly, if we're really looking at the picture of crime here, the FBI does its own table every year, its own statistics table of how racial breakdowns work, of racial crime breakdowns every year. It does break down that Black people are overrepresented in their committance of crime. I hate to say it. I hate to say it like that, but it is true. And if Black people are going to keep committing all the crime, then I would only expect that their police interactions would be more than Asians. No one ever talks about the Asian Black crime disparity. They only talk about the Black white disparity.
Yeah.
They never talk about straight white Asian, or I'm sorry, straight Asian males
Wait.
are underrepresented in crime.
Right.
It's like that would never fly because it's like, well, obviously Asian males don't commit as much crime. It's the same way that they never acknowledge the fact that less women are represented in crime stats as Black men. It's because
Right.
it's like, well, obviously women commit less crime than Black people. Like in
But
general, women
listen,
like
this is one of those reasons why, I mean, one of many reasons why I wish my dad was still with us. Now, on the one hand, I don't wish for a second he was still with us. He lived a long, full life. And I pray for his soul, but in my heart, I believe I know where he is. He lived a very good life. He was faithful to his wife and children. Never did anything seriously wrong that I was aware of, and
I
received an
have one.
apostolic pardon. Received an apostolic pardon
I have
on his
one more
deathbed.
question
I know
for you.
where he is, but yeah.
One more
Wait,
question.
do you want
You
me to
want
go
to?
ahead and then you ask the question?
I just have one more political question for you.
Okay, let
This
me
is
just finish
right
this
up
real
your
fast.
wheelhouse.
So my dad was an actuary though, and his knowledge of math and
I met your
statistics.
dad. I met your dad.
Yes, at
Great
my
guy.
wedding, yeah, and an awesome guy. But when I was growing up, he used to talk about statistics all the time, right? Little funny things like he would tell me he ran a spreadsheet when I was a kid and said, "This is how many children I should have if all of my children had children on the same schedule as me and your mother." I'm like, "Oh, okay." He's like, "I should have 113 with 72 on the way." We'd laugh at that, but I remember in the 90s, I remember Giuliani, when he's mayor of New York, talking about, "Oh, we got crime down." And my dad says, "Yes, yes, you did. But I got to point out something to you. In the late 1970s, for whatever reason, the number of baby boys who were born in this country dropped dramatically. That's going to affect the crime rate in major cities 17 to 20 years later." So he says, you can't take all the credit for that, but he knew that
Well,
the
then
system
actually, you know
was.
what? I'm gonna go a step deeper with you.
Sure.
And I didn't expect to go here. I didn't expect to go here, but I will go here. This is a question. It's not a
Yeah.
statement. It's a genuine question. There's a book called, have you heard of it? Freakonomics.
Oh, yes, I've heard of that.
Okay.
I've not read it, but I've heard of it. Yeah.
I haven't read all of it, but I've read one chapter that details the thing that I'm about to ask you.
Okay.
Their hypothesis is that the crime rate in the 90s dropped because of Roe v. Wade. And the people
Ooh.
that were going to have children that were going to commit the crimes, i.e., black people, aborted the babies that would have ended up committing the crimes that accounted for the drop in the crimes. I'm not saying it's moral. That's basically eugenics.
No, it's not. It is eugenics, but
that is
you
basically
could be
eugenics.
correct, but it also, I would argue against that, because the abortion rate also dropped the general population, not just the population of potential criminals. Although to a higher extent, it would have dropped the black population.
Well,
You and I know that abortion among the black population is the leading cause of death in the black community.
correct. And that's actually the argument that I use against black people the most is, imagine how much more political power we as black people would have if 60 million of us wouldn't have
Sure.
been murdered in the last 60 years.
Instead of
Imagine,
13%, you'd be what, 25, 30?
and I think a lot of groypers, a lot of America Firsters would
Yeah.
say, how do I put it without being banned from YouTube?
Yeah, you don't want to get that happen.
A lot of groypers would say, thank goodness Roe v. Wade happened, or else we'd be subjected to the whims of the black community to a level that we are subjected to now, but we'd be subjected to at an even higher level if we didn't even have Roe v. Wade. It's like,
Listen,
we're in this weird place where we're like, man, I don't like the black laws, but like, man, and I'm not pro.
let me
I'm
tell
not.
you, no,
I'm
no, I
pro-life.
know,
I'm
you're solidly
100%
pro-life.
pro-life.
I know that.
I'm solidly pro-life. I'm just
Yeah.
saying, and there's not even a question there. I could argue with, and you and I don't even have to argue, because
No, we
that's like,
don't. We're on the same page with that one.
that's not even something to argue about. I'm 100%
Yeah.
pro-life. But groypers would say, well, eugenics is good because X, Y, Z. And I would say, no, there's actually not a good argument to end human life. There's actually not a good argument.
Right.
I don't like it. I think it's evil. And I think the minute you start advocating for people ending human life before conception or after conception or partial birth, then you're
After
evil.
conception, before birth. The human life is not before conception.
But
Let me tell you, the dismantling of Western culture has taken many, or has been typified by many facets. Abortion, probably the biggest of them, and certainly a key component of that. But it goes beyond that. Okay, you've got the destruction of the nuclear family. You've got the destruction of traditional marriage. You've got you and I know this 100%. You from family members, me from just experience with other family members on my side. But the black nuclear family, look at what's happened to that through welfare, through government handouts, poverty, WIC, whatever, right? The whole thing was designed by Marxists, by leftists, to destroy the family and specifically the black family. So yeah, you could say abortion lowered the number of black children in this country, black citizens, right? But even those who were born in, were lucky enough to be born, were born into broken families, in, whatever, statistically speaking, at a higher rate than whites. And I don't think, when we talk to those groypers who say, well, thank goodness for Roe v. Wade, because we'd have to listen to the whims of 30% of the black population. But that black population, who knows what, how their political leanings would have been if it hadn't been for the Great Society, if it hadn't been for FDR, right? Because we know, you and I, that prior to the 1950s, the black community actually voted by and large Republican. Okay, and that's just a great big myth that the left
well, no, I
pushes out
think you're
there.
totally right. I think you're totally right. And who gets into this? Not Ron Paul. Rand Paul gets into
Rand
this,
Paul, yeah. Mm-hmm.
and not Tom Sowell. Larry Elder gets into this.
Yeah, yeah.
Larry Elder gets into the idea that the 1964 Civil Rights Act was actually a violation of freedom of association. It actually was, because you were forcing people under the force of law, which under the force of law means under the force of guns.
Right.
That means you're enforcing under government with guns, saying you must let black people into your business or else we will shoot you, more or less.
Right.
Because, you can take it to a bunch of different levels, but basically it's, if I don't let this black person into my restaurant, then they will call the cops on me. And then if I don't show up to court, then eventually it will lead to rule of law with cops showing up to my establishment.
Right.
So you just follow it logically. But that's the jumping point you have to follow, is like, is it really right to force someone to say I have to let everyone into my place of establishment? I don't think that's right, personally.
Let me share with you a story, or share with the viewers a story, because I've told you this story before. And I hope it'll illustrate my take on what you just said. My great grandmother came over to this country from Ireland as an indentured servant. There was a judge in New Jersey who paid for her passage if she would agree to work for 7 years for him without pay. What a terrible system, but whatever. So she does it. She escapes whatever poverty's going on in Ireland, leaves her family behind, comes here, works for 7 years for the judge. The 7 years are coming to an end, and she says, okay, I should go and look for a place to live, because she was a maid, a scullery maid, whatever, at his house. And she says, okay, I'm going to go out. She goes and looks at a boarding house. This is the early 1900s. And the woman who runs the boarding house takes a look at her last name, and says, yeah, I don't think so. I don't take your kind. And she went home, and she was kind of sad, and she told the judge, and he said,
the Irish were blacks before there were blacks.
Well, not before, but at the same time and in different places. Okay, in the north. The Irish were the blacks in the north. And
they were black. They were northern.
Can we say that? Well, it's your channel. You can say whatever you want, right? I don't believe in words that you can't say. I gotta say that. But she tells the judge, and the judge says, "That is the most awful thing I've ever heard. I want to tell you something. This man, by the way, this man was a man of goodwill. Before he was a Christian, before he was whatever, he was a man of goodwill. And he said, I have been putting aside every month the money that I would have paid a maid for you." And he gave it all to her. 7 years worth of a salary, all at once, tax-free. Well, she took the money, went back to the boarding house, bought the place, kicked the bitch out. But
Yeah, but
you
that's
know,
high. But that's high IQ.
it's high
It
IQ, but in a sense, when you were talking about freedom of association, she was willing to accept, well, this woman doesn't want me to live here, so I'll have to
correct.
find someplace else.
But
And
it's
I
very
always say, I don't want to be any place somebody doesn't want me anyway.
well, exactly, and that's the thing. And maybe we can end here because I
Yeah,
do
this
want
would
to
be a good
smoke a
spot. Yeah,
cigarette.
me
This would
too.
probably be a good
Oh, I
spot
so
to end.
want one.
Oh, dude, don't. I'll
And
see
my
you in a
glass
minute.
is empty. My
I'll
glass is
see.
empty.
Hey, I'll see you in a minute. But here's the thing. It's very and in all seriousness, I'm serious mode here.
Yeah.
The Black community is the only minority community in America that identifies with this aggrieved minority status. Have you noticed that? Like, I'm not even
Yes.
asking you to agree because that's like kind of that's extremely heterodox. But like, the Black community is the only minority community in America that identifies so heavily with being an oppressed minority that that's their identity. Like our whole
Their
identity,
identity is their oppression.
like not my identity, because my identity is like I'm awesome and I'm epic and I'm like I'm like winning. I'm always winning.
Yeah.
But then most Black people actually, when you look at it, like 90% plus of Black people's identity is like, no, my identity is that I'm a loser and that I'm poor and that I'm broke and that I'm hated on and that everyone hates me and that I can't do this and that like actually the reason I can't do this is because everyone hates me. And it's like, do you hate yourself or do you want to win? I like to win. I win every day in my
We
life.
call it winning.
We call it winning. We do a little trolling. We troll. We call it a little trolling. Bing, bong, bing.
Because I want to
Timothy,
win.
Tim, where do we
Bing,
follow you
bing,
on
bing.
Twitter? Tell us everywhere to follow you on.
All right. Well, but first of all, I want to say something to all your viewers. I have known this guy right here since he was 12 years old, and he has become happily for me one of my best friends. And I love. He's my family. He's my nephew. He's my brother, and I love having him in our life. And our kids love him. He's their cousin. You know, I can't ever say enough good things about him. But for the record, I'm the one who took him to CPAC last year, and that's where it all began. So anyway, what I will
Whoa.
say,
Yeah, no.
no,
We're going
here's
back
where you
next
follow
year. We're
me.
going back to CPAC. Tell them where to
Yeah,
follow you. Where do they follow
so
you?
on Twitter at Tim_teaching. It's YouTube. The search for the channel Homeschooling After Dark because I'm a homeschooler. It is me and several of my 8 sisters who have over 60 years experience homeschooling their kids between them, or among them rather, use the right term. And we have conversations about homeschooling. We drink, we smoke, we curse. So join the conversation because it is fun as hell. And I guess that's it for now. Look at Apple Podcasts, Homeschooling After Dark, Spotify, whatever, wherever you listen to your podcasts. And that's it.
Twitter account?
You want the other one?
Twitter. No, the teaching.
It's at Tim_teaching.
Tim, TIM
Underscore
teaching.
teaching, right.
I'm gonna share this whole episode once I upload tomorrow, but
I appreciate it. Yeah.
you guys have a good night. Obviously my DLive channel is gonna be in my intro and outro. Have a good night, fellas.
Thanks, Jordan. Appreciate it.